Over the past week or so, we have been bombarded with public domestic violence cases. From Keke Palmer filing against her child's father to Cassie filing against Diddy, seeing the conversation surrounding these instances, thinking about the ways that we respond to domestic abuse when it's in close proximity to us, made me feel compelled to talk about why a lot of us don't take domestic violence seriously. First, I want to talk about the Keke Palmer and Darius situation and how Darius's common controlling demeanor ties into this line of thinking that abuse is not a serious situation. In July of 2023, there was a video going around of Keke Palmer and Usher dancing together at his Las Vegas residency concert, which her then boyfriend and current child's father seemed not to like. Not because of where she was or who she was with, it was because of the outfit though. You a mom. And as you can see, he took to his Twitter account to say this to her publicly, which rubbed a lot of people the wrong way because at that point, once he went to Twitter to express his frustrations, that opened opportunity for everyone to have an opinion. And the public opinion did not rule in his favor. Because one, considering that he publicly chose to say what he didn't like instead of texting her like a normal person. And two, she had previously stated how she felt about her private problems being open for public consumption.
Big thing for me always was like, I'm not public. And even still now, our relationship is extremely private. Like, we show, right, but it's like, yeah, you don't really know.
Now, I'm gonna get to the abusive part in a second. Just bear with me. So at first, I didn't think anything of it. I just thought it was a little strange because he could have just, called and spoke to her about it if he felt that bothered by it. But then after seeing him receive the backlash from the tweet that he had posted and then seeing him make another tweet doubling down on what he said, we live in a generation where the man in the family doesn't want the wife and mother to his kids to showcase booty cheeks to please others, and he gets told how much of a hater he is. This is my family and my representation. I have standards and morals to what I believe. I rest my case. That which he did not.
Somebody say that your boyfriend's looking for me.
Now, before I say this, I don't want to sound like I'm shaming anyone for what they believe in. But judging from those tweets and other things that he has said, it insinuates that he wants to be a traditional man. Okay, cool, do you. But the problem with that entire image is when you want the perks of what it means to be a traditional man, but you don't want to do what it takes to maintain that. Completely skipping over the important parts of what it means, like making your child's mother your wife, and taking on the sole responsibility of her and your children, and etc. Which we all know that that's what she was doing. When certain guys claim traditionalism without knowing what goes into it, instead of it showing up as what it's supposed to be, like them being a loving and supportive partner, it makes them appear to be negative, controlling, and insecure. Because as humans, when we lack in one area, we try to overcompensate and make up what it is that we lack in another, which then leads to things like abusive and toxic relationships. This is why those pictures of him choking her and the stories that she provided in the court documents were not so far-fetched, and it was very on brand, and unfortunately not very surprising.
You the one over there and got them. I ain't never bought you nobody like that. You gonna sit your crazy ass up here and say that?
I've heard and seen plenty of stories about women being abused by men that they were taking care of, men that they were physically bigger than, and men who were just completely insecure and jealous of them as a person. I remember being a little girl and hearing things like, if a boy picks on you or if he hits you, that means that he likes you. And since I was a tall girl and I grew fast as a kid, I remember experiencing instances where boys would be jealous because of my height. So they try to give off this energy as an attempt to assert dominance, which I wasn't having. Now, they never hit me because they knew better, but the idea that abuse means love was instilled in our psyche from an early age, and it's so extremely dangerous. Because when you say things like this to your daughter at 7, and 20 years later she's coming to you with bruises, that's a direct result of a subconscious training that we place onto little girls. Men feeling insecure and inadequate to their partners have always been one of the few common reasons for domestic abuse. And when it's a heterosexual relationship, it's 10 times worse because of the pressure of gender roles and the traditional man concept derived from patriarchy.
Shit, I'm so tired. I'm a mother, after all.
And I don't want to go for the rest of this video without acknowledging how some men are domestic violence victims as well. And when we talk about the topics of domestic abuse and sexual assault, most don't really realize that men are typically left out of the conversation because there's a common belief that it doesn't happen to them, which is inaccurate. It may be less likely to happen, but it does happen. The reason that most people believe that it doesn't, and the reason that most don't really provide safe spaces for men to be vulnerable or even acknowledge that they have been a victim, is because of that traditional man patriarchy that Darius and so many others love so much. Because they hold so tight onto this idea that they have to be strong without fully understanding the concept of how that belief has affected this entire world as a whole. Which is another topic for another video, my God. But what about the men who seem to have it all but are still abusive? Now, Cassie suing Diddy is an entire entity in itself, but it represents a different side of abuse that is the same, but different all at once for more reasons than one. Because instead of being violent out of desperation and physical lack, men like Diddy resort to violence out of an extreme power trip. Kind of similar to what pastors do to kids or women in their church. Now, I won't exactly go into detail about what this man does to people because that'll most likely come out on its own, but the people who are around him, that have been around him, and they've overlooked what it is that he does and what he has done to Cassie and other people simply because of who he is and what he has, are a perfect representation of how people value money and power over what is morally correct. Because in hindsight, it makes me wonder, if these same people weren't on his payroll and they didn't view this man as a god, would they still be quiet about what it is that he's been doing? Their silence reminds me of how a lot of dudes don't hold their friends accountable for predatory and abusive behavior. They have this mindset that pretending that it doesn't exist, that they don't see anything wrong, or that it has nothing to do with them makes them completely innocent and scotch-free. It takes an outlier like the king of trolling, Curtis Jackson, to do what he does best, to balance the scales of yes men in their circle. But if you're a person who's witnessing what's happening and you know what you're witnessing is wrong, but yet and still you're still choosing to do nothing, then you're not that far from being in the same category as they are, to be honest. And that's not to say that you have to put yourself in a situation, because realistically speaking, in abusive relationships, the one who's receiving abuse doesn't always walk away right away. And they don't always stand up for themselves until they're ready. But that also doesn't mean that you as a person should continue a relationship with the abuser and not hold them accountable. And that all comes down to the idea that you are the company that you keep. Most times in these situations, the abuse victims don't take the fact that they are being abused as seriously as they should, because they might feel threatened by the abuser's power, their resources, because to be honest with you, there is a plethora of powerful men who have been accused of being abusive and being a predator while their career in public relations remain intact. So I can see how to the victim that could be intimidating, and if they were in a relationship with the person, unfortunately it becomes harder to leave because of connection and emotions. Or sometimes in certain situations, the abused victim literally convinces themselves that they deserve the treatment that they are receiving. No one can try to force the process of getting a person to walk away from being abused. But when they are ready to stand up for themselves, we need to believe them. I hate that when people come out about the way that they've been victimized, before offering a sense of compassion, folks immediately jump the gun in trying to protect the abuser. And they start asking stupid questions like, why are you just saying something now? When the reality is, it doesn't matter how long ago it happened. It happened. I don't care if it was 20 years ago, it happened and they still deserve to be heard. Most of the time when they come out, it's not because they want to put the responsibility on you to give them justice, it's because they want to spread awareness. Cassie filing against Diddy wasn't so she could take it to court and have this long drawn out hearing reliving the experiences of what he did to her in her first 10 years of being an adult. She filed a civil case, non-criminal, to be financially compensated for what's been taken from her that she can never get back, and to also shed light to what's been in the darkness about a person who's been terrorizing for a very long time. Things are bigger than what we just perceive them to be, and we're never going to understand anything if we constantly jump to conclusions and judge without offering compassion. Specifically compassion for the person who's in the situation that we've never experienced, that we've never been in. We can talk all day long about how we would handle something, but the reality is that we don't really know what we would do until we are in said situation. And some victims haven't even healed enough to acknowledge the fact that they've been abused. It's sad to say that people can scream call the police all they want, but there have been countless instances and stories to where legal authorities don't take abuse and domestic violence victims seriously until it's too late for the victim. I'm a firm believer in going to the necessary lengths that you need to protect yourself. So if you're watching this and you're someone going through a domestic violence situation, don't be discouraged. And when you know it's time for you to move, make a move and don't think twice about it.
And it'll take over your mind.